What's up YouTube? My name is Caden and you're watching Gas It Garage. In today's video, we're going to be doing part 3 of the 670 Yerf Dog go-kart project here. In this video, I'm going to be building the cross bracing for the trailing arms. I'm going to be hooking up the sprockets and chains, as well as hooking up the brakes, throttle cable, and hopefully putting the wheels and tires on. Alright guys, so in the last video of this project, we got the main framework for both of the trailing arms built and welded together, and I also built the axles and hubs on the ends of these. I did a little bit of welding off camera, just finishing welding the main framework for the trailing arms here. But before I start doing the cross bracing, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a few shims under the engine to tension the chain properly, and I'm going to hook up the first chain on the main drive sprocket there. I have the CVT put on along with the belt, and it's all bolted in, and the alignment is pretty good, I would say. And then I also have the main drive chain put on along with a key there in the sprocket, and then I have the engine all tightened down along with some shims that I had to put in there to tension the chain properly. So now that I have all that done, I can start building all of the cross bracing on the trailing arms. And I'm also going to put the drive chains for those on along with the sprockets. after about 2.5 hours of work, I have most of the cross bracing mostly welded in. There's still a couple of places I have to finish welding, but I'll do that later. I also put the chains on along with the drive sprockets on both sides here, and I also put on the brake disc. Now this chain right here is still pretty sloppy, but that's why I designed it like this, so I can stack a whole bunch of washers between the pillow blocks and the mount points here, like right in there, so I can properly tighten up these chains. And also, I finally got some wheels and tires off of Facebook Marketplace for 40 bucks. Now, the bolt pattern that they originally were was a little bit too small, so I had to re-drill the holes to fit on the hubs right there. And then this one was pretty severely rusted, so I threw a whole bunch of JB Weld on it, and now it holds air. So I'm gonna go ahead and bolt these on real quick, and I will spin the jack shaft so you can see the whole system working. All right, so now that the tires are on, if I turn the CVT, both tires spin. This one is wobbling a little bit more, just mainly because the chain's so loose, but I'll tighten that up later. And also, if I turn this, that's pretty cool. Awesome. All right, so now that I have all this done, the next thing I'm gonna do is finish up all of the cross bracing, because I wanna add a couple more pieces here and there, mainly some pieces of angle iron across here and across here, and then a couple other pieces probably higher up to prevent these from twisting. And then after that, I'm going to build the shock mounts and put the shocks on, as well as mounting the brake caliper. But I'm gonna have to do that in the morning because it's late. Morning guys, it's the next day, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started on finishing up all of the cross bracing so I can move on to building the shock mounts so I can get this thing off of the jack stands and standing on its own four wheels. have all the cross bracing finalized. I put these two braces in to prevent the trailing arms from twisting because the tires are just on one side. So there's a lot of force trying to twist them. So this should prevent that. And then I also finally got the shocks mounted. I lifted this thing up a little bit higher on some bigger jack stands to kind of set my ride height. Now I can always cut these off later if I don't like it, or if it's too soft, I might actually add these, which were originally the shocks that were on here when this thing just had the basic swing on them. These are very, very stiff and springy, and they don't have any sort of dampening in them. But I might add them if these are too soft, because considering the geometry of this, these are probably going to be too soft. But let's take this thing off of the jack right here and see how it works. Alright, that's just like I thought. It's a little bit too soft. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to first, before I start building another set of shock mounts, I'm going to swap these out with those and see if that makes any difference. But yeah, that's pretty soft. So I've got the shocks swapped out. So let's lower this thing down and see how this works. It's a little better, but the ride height is still a little bit lower than I want it, and it's still pretty soft and squishy and springy. But at least the suspension works now. I'll probably have to get stiffer shocks for this thing that are also probably a little bit longer than these. But for right now, this thing's holding itself up and works pretty well. And also it does that. That's pretty cool. So I'll just get some stiffer shocks, put those on. But in the meantime, I'm gonna start working on the brake caliper mount. All right, guys, we got a lot done in this video. We got all of the cross bracing built and fully welded together. We got the sprockets and chains on. We mounted the wheels and tires. I got the shocks mounted, although I do have to kind of figure out what I'm going to do about the extra bouncy and squishy shock situation. I've been debating whether to just buy some new stiffer shocks or to build a second set of shock mounts so I can put the other set of shocks on, so I can have 4 shocks on this thing, which will make it a lot stiffer. But after thinking it over, I'm probably just going to actually do both, because that will allow me to have both options in case I want to do either one. But we also got the CVT mounted, and I mounted the brake caliper and the rest of the braking system here, as well as the choke cable and throttle cable. So all I have left is mounting the gas tank, fuel pump, and I also want to redo the exhaust, and then obviously the shock situation. But other than that, the majority of the big stuff on this go-kart is pretty much done. So in the next video of this project, I'm going to be finishing up those last few things and hopefully taking this thing for its first test drive. But I got to end this video here, guys. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment, and I will see you in part 4.